Welcome back. A little while ago, I was talking with a couple, and the husband was telling me that the wife told him, "You need to go fishing. You need to go spend some time alone, think about some things." And I think this is true of a lot of men. They go fishing or hunting or go work in their garage to go and process things in their head, things that are going on in their life. And I think this is not a new thing. This is found in the Bible too. And so if we have our Bibles, we're going to go to John chapter 21. John chapter 21. And this takes place right after Jesus has died, has been resurrected, and has revealed himself a few times to some of the disciples. And we come to chapter 21, verse 3. Simon Peter said to them, Nathanael and the sons of Zebedee, right? Some of the disciples. He says to them, "I am going fishing," he says. And they said to him, "We are going with you also." So they went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. So we see the disciples and Peter basically saying, "Hey, I need to process. I need to go fishing." And so he goes and gets in a boat with some of his friends, and they don't catch anything. But I don't think that was the point. I don't think the point was for them to actually catch anything. I think the point was going to a situation or a place where it was quiet and where they didn't have the stresses of everything else going on. And I think we need this sometimes in our lives. We have things all around us that stress us, and we need to deal with that. And so we find Peter and these other disciples, they're out in a boat in the middle of the night, and they catch nothing. It comes to dawn, and we come along, and we get to verse 4. "But when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said to them, 'Children, have you caught any food?' And they answered him, 'No.'" This is a common question when you're walking along a river, or you come along and see someone in a boat, and you say, "Have you caught anything?" And they said no, hadn't caught anything. And then he said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." Now, they had just been through a complicated weekend of Jesus dying and resurrecting, and they're trying to process all of this. And so they go to this thing that they know what to do, but then they're failing at that too. And then some guy on the bank says, "Cast your net on the other side." That doesn't make sense. Well, what did they have to lose? So they did. So they cast the net, and now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. There was a realization at this point. They realized that this person on the shore was not just a normal person. It was Jesus. Therefore, the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." Now when Simon Peter had heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, which he had removed, and plunged into the sea, dove into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net with all the fish. And so we see Jesus coming to Peter in a time that after he had rejected Christ. And now it's Jesus is coming to him. And so I think this time where he went away was a time for him to reflect on what he had done, what was going on in his head. And now we have Jesus coming to him, reaching out to him. And Jesus is there on the side of the lake there, and he has coals there for them, and there's he tells them to bring the fish. And then we get to verse 15. "So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than fishing? Do you love me more? Who is it that you love?' And And he said to them, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said, "Feed my lambs." And he said to him again the second time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" And he said, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Tend my sheep." And he said to him a third time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" And Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." And so I think there was a transition here in Peter's life where he went from wondering if he was restored again relationship-wise with Christ to restored. Jesus had restored that broken relationship with him. And then God calls him to go feed his lambs, feed his sheep, and tend his sheep. To not stay fishing, but to go and do service for him. So this time outside fishing helped him process what was important. He's not the only person in the Bible that has done this. Earlier on in Mark chapter 6, so if you have your Bibles, go to Mark chapter 6, we see this coming away concept. Mark chapter 6 and verse 30, the apostles had been sent out 2 by 2 to go and heal the sick and preach the gospel. And they had come back to Jesus. Now verse 30, then the disciples gathered to Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and both what they had taught. So they had done all these great things. And then he said to them, notice this, "Come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." They had just done this great amount of preaching. God had done great things through them. And then Jesus is telling them that, hey, you guys need some time to rest, to process. So he said to them, "Come aside by yourselves into a deserted place and rest a while," a place where it's quiet. "For there are many coming and going, and they did not have even time to eat." Now, some of our lives are so busy. Our lives are so busy. We've got things going, taking kids to school or just keeping up with our jobs, that we don't even have time to eat properly. And this is affecting us. And so Jesus is counseling to go inside and rest. So they departed, verse 32, to a deserted place in a boat by themselves. Maybe they did some fishing as they went. But the multitudes saw that, and they saw them departing and knew him and ran there on foot from all the cities. They arrived before them and came together to him. So they had gone around to the other side. And Jesus, when he came out, he saw the great multitude and moved with compassion for them, because they were like sheep, not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. When the day was now far spent, his disciples called to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late." And then know what Jesus does? He goes and feeds 5,000 people. And after this ministering to the 5,000 people, we get to verse 45. Immediately he made his disciples get into a boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida. And so he sends his disciples away. He realizes, hey, you disciples, you need to get away. So he sends them away in the boat. And he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent them away, notice what Jesus does. He departed to the mountain to pray. Jesus goes to the mountain to pray. He realized that he needed some time to decompress, to process things. He needed that connection with his Father. So he went away to pray. How much more do we need that? So we need to take that time. Put it in your schedule. Go and find a place in nature somewhere maybe, and take the time to pray. Now remember, his disciples are in the boat, and they're in the middle of the Sea of Galilee there probably, and verse 47, now when the evening had come, The boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. And when he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them, now about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea, and it would have passed by them. But they saw it. They were in the middle of the storm, and they were probably about ready to drown, and yet Jesus comes to them and calms the waves. The next passage we're going to go to is in 1 Kings chapter 19. 1 Kings chapter 19, we have Elijah. He had just gotten down from Mount Carmel, where fire came down and consumed the sacrifices, and the prophets of Baal were all killed. And he comes back to town, and this is what happened. Verse 1, chapter 19 of 1 Kings. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "Let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." The queen had threatened his life. Wasn't just talking bad about him, was totally threatening his life. You're going to die by this time tomorrow. So what did Elijah do? It says, when he saw that, he arose and ran for his life and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. He got away. And then it says, and he prayed that he might die, and said, "It is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." He thought he was at the end. And sometimes we may feel that way too. And so he goes and gets away. But notice what God does. Elijah is out in the wilderness, out away from everything, thinking that this is it. Then we get to verse 5. As he lay and slept under the broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and there by his head was a cake baked on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Arise, eat, because the journey is too great for you." So he arose and ate and drank, and he went in the strength of the food 40 days and 40 nights, as far as Horeb, the mountain of God. There's a point here that I think is very important. That there comes a time where we need to sometimes come away and eat some good food and have some quiet and have some sleep so we can deal with the problems. But then there comes a time that we need to move also. And so here we see him getting that strength, and that strength is coming from God. So he rose there, went to the mountain of God, and he went into a cave, and he spent the night in that place. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" God saying, "What are you doing here?" Now you notice Elijah ran from the threats, comes out to this secluded place, and God comes to meet him where he's at. I think there's a very important point there. God comes to where he is, even though he's run. And so Elijah says, "I have been very zealous for the Lord of hosts, God of hosts. For the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, tore down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." He thought that was it, and he thought he was the only one. Then he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, met him there. And a great strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a fire. Sounds like what things are going on today. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, look, listen to this, a still small voice. See, he was away from all the hustle and bustle. And he was able to listen for that still small voice. And I think that's what we need sometimes. A time that we can come away and listen to that voice. So it was when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, again, the same thing, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, again, the same thing, "I have been very zealous for the Lord of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant and torn down your altars and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." He thought it was done. And then the Lord talks to him again. He said, and the Lord said to him, "Go. Go and do this for me, anoint the king." And it goes on, and we get to verse 18, and it says here, "Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth has not kissed him." We see here God saying, hey, you're not the only one. There are 7,000 in Israel that are with you. Go out with them. You've come away, you've rested a while, you've processed, but you realize that I'm God. I'm in that still small voice. And so for us today, we have Jesus going to the mountain to pray. We have Elijah going out and God coming to him even though he's running. We have Peter being restored after he's gone fishing and processed. And we have many other people in the Bible that did something very similar. We have David out in the wilderness feeding his sheep. We have Jesus, as we talked about, John the Baptist and Jonah. Jonah in the belly of the whale. He had some time to process and pray. We have Job and Moses and Daniel. These all spent time in prayer, coming away and reflecting and processing. And we need that. We need that time with God to deal with the craziness of this life. So I invite you guys this week or today, spend some time getting away from the craziness of life and rest a while. And that's what Sabbath is all about. It's a time to come to Him and listen for that still, small voice. Pray with me. Dear God, I want to thank you for speaking to us, even when we may be running, like Jonah was. But yet you come to where we're at. And I thank you for that. Be with us this week in your name. Amen. Thanks for being with me, and I'll see you next week.